Welcome back to whatever this video is going to be. I'm not going to stress myself to create a perfect intro. We're just gonna get into it. Hopefully you have read the thumbnail or the description. Yes, we are going to be having a discussion that has already been had 100 times over, but I need to put out content because turns out the other video that I wanted to make about this book, it's taking longer than I anticipated. Now I understand why you guys say it took me 5 months to film this video, but I know that I can at least get this one done so I can feel like I've done something with this YouTube account. For the people who do not know me, I am Emmanuel E. Osai. I am a dark fantasy, horror, and apparently romance author. These are my books. I like what I wrote. I really enjoy what I wrote, and I think you'd like it too. Cosmic horrors, dark fantasy, religious horror, the good stuff. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. Reading is political. I know, we're getting woke. The woke agenda. This is not what I signed up for when I followed. But yeah, this is a conversation that has been had 100 times over, and I just want to add on to it. But how did we get here? How the hell did we get here? Because I thought this was common knowledge within the bookish community. But all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, we've seen a gradual shift towards this idea that books are just for fun. If you've been in the bookish space, you have seen this. You've seen versions of this counter-argument. Why can't books just be for fun? Books aren't meant to be political. We're not supposed to think this hard when reading books. We used to be a real country. And then the Fire Nation attacked. You see, because I believe that part of the reason why people are gradually moving towards the idea that books serve no real purpose or have any real-world impact is because of the rise of bubblegum fiction. Bubblegum fiction is something you've heard me say in one of my earlier videos, but I'm going to try and deep dive into what I mean by bubblegum fiction. What is bubblegum fiction? What are bubblegum books? Bubblegum fiction and bubblegum books is something I started noticing when the world kind of ended in 2020. People were at home, they had more time to read. A lot of people started getting into reading and watching films and binging TV shows. But you see, not everybody wants to read the long, chunky book with hundreds of pages of world building and explanation and lore. Some people just wanted something straightforward, simplified, watered down, something they could pick up, chew, spit out, pick up another one, chew, spit out. And the book community was already full of book nerds, people who were reading the chunky fantasy novels, the chunky romance novels, people who've been reading books for a while. But then the Fire Nation attacked. Bubblegum fiction was more accessible to people who don't enjoy reading. Bubblegum fiction kept things simple. Bubblegum fiction, they were written with the intent to appear deep, but they really weren't that deep. When you sit down and analyze some of these popular book talk books, you realize that they're all the same story. The same small and petite girl, the same jawline, bro. All the male love interests are the same person. It's the same recycled story, the same recycled plot. A court of crowns and roses, a court of courts, a court of courts, a court of dragons and shadows, and the court of courts. It's the same thing. Bubblegum. It's just bubblegum. And because these books are bubblegum, people tend to get very defensive when people want to have constructive conversations around these books. Because these books tend to be riddled problematic, nonsensical, and random or lazy storytelling or world building. They often rely on tropes. They don't really attempt to go there. They might either only focus on the spice and forget to develop the actual characters beyond the spice. But don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with spicy books. But there is something wrong with badly written books, because you can't even appreciate the spice when you're reading these bubblegum books, because why does nothing make sense within your story world? And you see, because these bubblegum books were written solely for entertainment and not to be analyzed as literary masterpieces, right? It created a specific kind of author. It created the mediocre Mandies. If you've been in the bookish community, you know exactly who we're talking about. You know exactly what genre of author we're talking about. It's the usual suspects. Because these bubblegum books are so easy to write, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. And it shows in the writing. Because why did you not think that through before you wrote that down? And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with writing books solely for entertainment. But there is something wrong with intentionally writing, can I say shitty? Shitty books. I'm going to say it. I'm going to accept my YouTube strike. These books are shitty. Shitty to the core. I think The Apples is shitty right to the core from all the other shitty books passed down from all the shitty books coming before. These books are bad. These books are bad because some of these authors are so lazy. They're so lazy. They're so lazy, and everybody knows it. It's true. And because these books are bubblegum, solely for entertainment, these authors tend to amass a cult-like following of people who only read bubblegum fiction. So they don't even know or want to understand what other people are talking about when they point out problems with the story. These authors have a cult-like following of people who tell them that they're great, you're amazing, you're anything you read out, anything you write out, read it. So these authors don't even attempt to learn or do better because the bubblegum readers tell them that they're the best authors in the world. They defined this genre. The bubblegum gets worse. They continue to churn out these stories. It's why whenever you hear anything bad about Book Talk, it's from the usual suspects. It's the bubblegum books by bubblegum authors being pushed by bubblegum readers. And all of this, in my opinion, has accumulated to why we are where we are when it comes to books and how we engage with literature. Because the most popular books are bubblegum books, because the bookish space is dominated by these bubblegum books and bubblegum authors and bubblegum readers, how we are allowed to engage with literature has changed completely. Because not liking a popular book is equated to you hating the author and you hating everybody who has enjoyed that book. Pointing out errors within a story is viewed as you attacking the author. Having any form of constructive conversation around the book is you bullying the author. And we've seen this conversation and debate in almost every bookish space. Stay out of reviewer spaces. Stay out of, protect reviewer spaces, because readers who don't like the popular book and say they don't like the popular book, there's a likelihood that they're going to get dogpiled by the stands of the bubblegum book. We've seen it. There are people who've gotten their accounts banned because they didn't like the popular book. There are people who are still getting trolled because they didn't like the popular book by the popular bubblegum author. It's becoming difficult to enjoy the bookish space because of those bubblegum readers and bubblegum authors and their general sensitivity to any form of criticism. Criticism, feedback, reviews that could help them write better stories in the future. And I'm going to use myself as an example. My debut novel, the first edition, was an absolute disaster. The formatting was wrong. I took the Word document and just put it on Amazon, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to figure this out. The ebook? What? Like, I look back at my older drafts and I'm like, I'm grateful for the bookish community I had at the time who told me the truth, who gave me constructive feedback. One of my mutuals, Santana Knox, she literally had to help me reformat that book. That's why she's in the acknowledgements as Santana, welcome to your tape. And that's the importance of having a community of people who are free to tell you the truth because they know you're not going to overreact and say you're being attacked and bullied. Because if nobody told me, if everybody around me just gave me 5 stars because it's my debut and they wanted me to feel special, my books would be terrible. I would not be where I am when it comes to my writing today. My books would be horrible. I probably would have gotten canceled for something by now. I probably would have been on the problematic authors list by now because there were a lot of things I needed to improve on and edit and fix. Because if you can fix it, fix it. Don't throw a tantrum and attack people. Fix it. Because some of these bubblegum stories that have gotten dragged all over Book Talk, they probably weren't even that bad. They just might have benefited from the author taking it down and just fixing what needed to be fixed. But no, some people take any form of feedback as bullying, and their readers also take it as bullying. Because how dare you tell this author the truth? And all of that nonsense, straight up nonsense, has led to the rise of people saying things like books aren't political. Books are just supposed to be for fun. We're not supposed to be thinking too hard. There are people who complain that books have too many pages in them. There are people who complain that books have too many descriptions in them and they just gloss over it completely. Because, like, how do you read books like The Hunger Games and open your mouth to say books aren't political? Books, they're just fiction. They're not political. And, like, okay, maybe you don't want to read The Hunger Games, but, like, almost every fictional story is rooted in politics. Your dystopian fiction that, like, you're comparing to real life, that already happened to Black and other marginalized people. The author based it off of... Let me not crash out on YouTube. But, like, what the hell? What the hell? Like, the amount of rubbish takes we've seen over the past few months of 2025? Oh my goodness. And it's only going to get worse because they're banning books now. I mean, they've always been banning books, but, like, we're seeing book bannings in full force right now. And some people still will argue and say that books aren't political. If books were not political, why are people trying to ban books? Why are people specifically targeting marginalized authors? Why are they even banning books at all if books aren't political? Fiction has always been political. Authors have always used their work to talk about issues that they might not have been free enough to be direct about. Authors have always used their work to educate people on real life things, in unfamiliar settings, so it can kind of be neutral, right? Anyone can understand. Anyone can identify with these characters. And once you see it, you can recognize it in the real world and take action. And for some authors, their work is political because they are marginalized. I am a Black author. Because I'm a Black author, my work is always going to be politicized. Black authors are part of the people who are being targeted by book banners. Tell me why a book about a Black girl loving her hair is so dangerous to a school that they need to ban it. How is that dangerous to anybody? But it is, because the book is political. Because you see, it's making the Alabasta children feel bad about themselves, even though Alabasta children have been the default of almost every fantasy, cartoon, or movie. Like, it's always catered to a specific kind of person. And that's why we're seeing so much pushback on books from marginalized authors, because books are political, you know? And we've all heard the saying, why do fascist governments go after books? Even things like reading is political, because marginalized people through history were always punished for wanting to be educated, for wanting to read books, because you're not supposed to be reading. You're supposed to be working on the plantation. You're not supposed to be reading. You're supposed to be pumping out children. You're not supposed to be reading. What? You can read? You must be a witch. Burn her. Reading has been politicized because books educate people. And when people are educated, they know when they are being screwed over and oppressed, and therefore take action. And the powers that be are not too fond of the people knowing that they're being screwed over. So they ban books. They control the media. They crack down on representation. Because a Black person being a mermaid, it's oh no. Oh, that's woke. A Black elf? Oh my gosh. It's scientifically impossible for a Black person to be. And because we've completely shifted the way we engage with media, because so much media has been like fast food, because people don't want to think that hard about the media they consume, it's led to the rise of bubblegum media, bubblegum books. But since we're talking about books, we're going to keep it on books. Some people don't want to hear anything about the books they enjoy because they don't want to think about it. Like, they will see how the orcs are treated very similarly to the way Black and Indigenous people were treated, but you're a bad person for pointing it out. You're a horrible person for pointing it out. And I kid you not, I've dealt with these people one-on-one. I've been on Book Talk since 2020. I've dealt with all kinds of people. And I'm going to give you an example of why books are political. I am somebody who primarily writes diverse characters, well, BIPOC characters specifically. I didn't grow up watching TV shows or movies with characters that reflected my friend group. We were always following the white children. And maybe there's like a Bunny Bennett, and she's a representation for all seasons of the show because they keep killing off every single Black person that appears on The Vampire Diaries. But that's another conversation for another day. And BIPOC teens are hardly represented in these types of stories. Our childhoods are never romanticized. We can never lead the narrative. We always need to follow the white people around. I mean, look at Lucas in Stranger Things. He's been a main character, but has Lucas led a storyline? No, he hasn't. He's been following the white people around the whole time. So yeah, I wanted to write a story with characters that reflected my friend group when I was growing up. How would my friend group deal with the supernatural forces in a small, predominantly white town? And you see, I intentionally put my characters on the front cover because I knew who I was writing for. And guess what happened? Guess what somebody said? I was showing different covers I've used for my book, but the cover somebody had an issue with was the cover where all the characters were displayed. Woke social commentary. This is a book about eldritch terrors and people throwing up snakes. But this person saw people of color and they were like, woke agenda. Bruh. And that experience alone, that reaction from people within the bookish community, their refusal to see people who don't look like them in their fiction, it's why we say books are political. Because black and brown authors have a much harder time blowing up within the bookish space than white authors do with the stories that they write. Publishing is way harder for marginalized people. Publishing is still inaccessible towards a lot of marginalized people. And with these new book bannings and restrictions and fear-mongering, it's going to get a lot more difficult for certain people to get visibility. But you see, because books aren't political, people don't want to see this. They don't want to hear you talking about this. They don't want to think about the fiction that they're reading. Even their bubblegum stories that aren't that deep still have a sprinkle of real life issues within their fiction, because all fiction is rooted in reality. From the racially ambiguous characters that we keep seeing popping up in these bubblegum books, because, they don't want to make the person a person of color because they still want their white audiences to thirst over them, all the way to the languages that they appropriate, all the way to the kingdoms that they set up. How orcs are always indigenous coded and elves are always like English coded. Vampires are always top of society. Werewolves are always coded a very specific way. Like, we could go on and on and on and give multiple examples. But it all circles back to one undeniable fact. Books are political. Reading is political. All fiction is political. And yes, you are free to willfully ignore this. But don't complain when you no longer have access to your BL love stories. Don't complain when you no longer have access to your sapphic love stories. Don't complain when you no longer have access to your spicy books that you love so much. The monster romance, the dark romance, the spicy books you love so much, all of that could go. All of it could go. There are a lot of things we're seeing that we never thought we'd see in our lifetimes because they were behind us. But we're in a place where all of that could go. Your favorite bubblegum author, your favorite bubblegum book could be next on the banned book list. And maybe when that happens to you, you will finally start listening to everybody who's been telling you that books are political, reading is political, and we should be thinking hard and reflecting on the material we read and promote. And yeah, that's all I have to say in this video. And thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the YouTube for good skin.